Hello and a very warm welcome to this roundtable discussion. I'm Priya Shade and I'm going to begin by giving you a short context before we begin this discussion. To survive, sustain and succeed in this competitive marketplace, many startups aspire for scale in their user base. With a population of more than 1.2 billion people whose needs, wants, problems and solutions are diverse and unique. Hitting this magic number is a very real proposition in India, provided the startup build the right technology strategy to scale rapidly. Thus, it is important to empower startups with world-class tools, cloud services that allow them to build applications of the future. One of the major benefits of choosing the cloud over on-premise architecture is the ability to easily and quickly scale. So if your business is in the process of growing, it's important to know your technology options so that you can make informed decisions on how to scale. However, as cloud native tech stack grows, companies will need to rethink their cloud strategy. A haphazard approach to digital transformation is a pathway to failure, as indicated by McKinsey's report that 70% of complex large-scale transformations fail to reach their goals due to poor planning. To discuss how businesses can future-proof themselves and unlock the true power of data by leveraging the cloud, we have with us a power-packed panel. Join me in welcoming Krishnan Parameswaran, who's the CTO and co-founder at Namaste Credit, a startup that's democratizing SME lending and making the entire business loan process better and transparent with the help of technology. We also have Anil Bhat, who's the co-founder of Epifi, which is a fintech startup that is helping over 400 million underserved Indians to save and invest. We have Srivaths Varadharajan, who is the COO at Spice Money, India's leading rural fintech company that's empowering more than 100 million merchants and nanopreneurs on its platform. We have Prasanna Ranganathan, who's the founding member at Epifi. Prior to this, he worked at Flipkart, PayPal, Netflix, and more notably, among all the companies that he's worked for. His areas of expertise include infrastructure, back-end design, data-driven product engineering, machine learning, and building systems to run in the cloud through AWS. We have Radhesh Shankaranarayanan, who is the director and GM Medium Businesses India at Dell Technologies. Radhesh is responsible for expanding the Dell Technologies medium business segment in India by establishing Dell Technologies as a preferred vendor for digital transformation. So in this roundtable, we hope to decode effective multi-cloud strategies covering cloud as a service, hyper-converged infrastructure, data storage solutions, server solutions, cyber resiliency, and so much more. So welcome all of you, and thank you so much for being a part of the panel. I want to begin by talking a little bit about, understanding the scale of impact that your organization is bringing about and how your cloud strategy is helping you deliver on that impact. Let's begin with you, Srivaths.
Sure. Thanks, Priya. Just to give a brief background, Spice Money is India's largest rural fintech organization. We serve merchants, more than 1 million merchants, more than 18,000 PIN code, and it's a B2B, B2C model, where through this merchants, we have served more than 100 crore plus transactions from customers. Now that talks about the intensity and the scale of the business at which we are running with, and it's a pure form of financial inclusion that we're driving across tier 3 and tier 4 locations across pan India. And when you look at this intensity, we have to work, we have no choice but to work 365 days. There is no holiday, there's no bank holiday or anything. So it's about the cash withdrawal, cash deposit, domestic money transfer. And wherever there is a direct touch point of consumer and the merchant and the cash transactions are involved, we are directly there to enable the ecosystem for merchants to serve the end consumer. Now, when you keep this entire ecosystem in mind, the availability of your infrastructure, availability of your applications, your contact points of your merchant becomes very critical part of the ecosystem, which means your people, process, technology, and the infrastructure becomes a very core element because the availability is crucial for the business to run.
Krishna, would you like to share your views on the same?
Namaste Credit, basically, as you already pointed out, we democratize SME lending, right? So we have two different business verticals. One business is where we aggregate loans and we try to lend loans for the SMEs represented by channels. So it's more of a B2B kind of a marketplace. And on the other side, we have tied up with 70 banks and NBFCs. So it's a patent-driven a tech platform where we process the details that are given by the borrowers towards lending, right? The other thing is the same platform is used by leading banks and NBFCs, where we are trying to automate a lot of underwriting process. And through this mechanism, we are bringing in efficiencies across different segments in the market. On marketplace is more towards bringing efficiency, bringing more digitization, automation towards end borrowers and channel-driven organizations. And we are also giving our platform to leading banks and NBFCs, where the credit underwriting automation is happening within our platform, so that the complete efficiency gain is there for the loan processing as such. So recent times, we have built-in solutions around digital onboarding platform, where we actually try to bring out the data points from the borrower documents. For example, you upload a KYC or banking, we try to extract the data, validate the data, check for forensics, like any tampering of that information real time, and try to understand the information and analyze and represent the information which is actually consumed by banks. So we are bringing in efficiency at scale, so that these processing can happen much more in a real-time basis, and the decisioning can be done faster.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Krishnan. I have a question for you. I want to bring you in, Prasanna, into the conversation. Why is the cloud important to reach the magical number of 1 million plus customers? And how do you leverage cloud to provide a wow kind of customer experience for so many millions of users?
At FI, we are building a neobank for the working professionals and the smart bank for the future, right? And fortunately for us, a couple of months ago, we actually hit the magic number of 1 million plus users and growing, right? So Srivaths talked about a lot of the benefits of the cloud, in the sense that if we are trying to build a financial product where we are trying to, as an unknown entity, we want to convince the discerning Indian customer out there to trust us with their finances and stuff. It's very important to, from that angle, to build a product and a service which is reliable, which is scalable, which just works, right? So from that angle, cloud is a no-brainer. But in addition to that, specific to us, what I'll also highlight is a couple of things, right? So as part of delivering a wow experience, at FI, you can sign up for a full KYC account in a matter of minutes, right? Now, there is a lot of challenges we have to solve in order to be able to do that, right? Starting with the regulatory and compliance requirements, right? We have to ensure we take no shortcuts there. All the documents provided by the customers are in order and everything. And not just that, right? There is a ton of things we need to do to ensure risk and fraud is minimized, right? And just one simple thing, what we do there in order to enable this entire KYC process, where you open a full KYC account in a matter of minutes, we do complicated stuff like computer vision, image analysis, and a lot of ML oriented work to ensure that there is no spoof happening. The documents you provided are actually what they claim to be, and you are also actually a live person and all that, right? So some of these higher order functionalities, we are able to do it quicker in the cloud by leveraging some of the higher order ML services around computer vision and whatnot. That's now available in many of the leading cloud platforms, right? So you start with some of the basic building blocks in terms of scalability, elastic compute, and reliability, and now you're going up the food chain in terms of being able to quickly solve for complex ML and other challenges as well, right? So that's just one example of how we are leveraging the cloud to really build a differentiated product and deliver a wow experience for our customers.
Absolutely. Thanks for your perspective. I would want to bring both Radhesh and Anil into this conversation to ask you what each of you do to get the cloud strategy right, because, how do you keep improving it to stay competitive and even abreast of the dynamics of technology? Let's begin with you, Anil.
So for me, cloud is the only way how you go about the tech, right? I mean, the on-premise deployments are no longer followed in practice. Now, quickly give you a background just for the benefit of everyone, right? What we do at Sipli. Sipli is a digital bank for the financially underserved masses, right? The target segment we are talking about is 40 crore Indians, right? And Sipli has 3 different product verticals. It's into savings, it's into lending, as well as it is into insurance. Savings being the primary approach that we are taking at Sipli, right? Now, as Prasanna mentioned, right, when you are driving this entire product digitally, right, a lot of things goes behind the scenes, right? Be it digitally onboarding the customer end to end, be it the digital KYCs, as well as the data insights, right? Getting to know about the user behaviors, right? Segmenting the users, targeting the marketing approaches, right? Everything is driven by tech. It is not possible to do these things manually in a traditional approach, right? So one always has to be on the cloud and continuously figure out approaches where everything can be done via technology, right? If there is anything that is getting done manually, if that is something taking a lot of manual bandwidth, then we have to go back and reevaluate how we can automate this, right? I think that mindset is very important to stay, up to date on the cloud. I think it's the mindset. It's driven by the mindset.
Right. Radhesh, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, hi. I think an August panel out here. Fortunate to be part of this discussion. From a Dell perspective, I think what we do is we are providing the platform, whatever they choose. The customers are choosing whether they want to go on-prem or on cloud. Now, more often than not, the customers are, such as the August panel out here. I heard about the, fintech. Most of the companies here are on fintech, and data is very important. So we look at it from a two-pronged strategy. One is that most of your workloads, typically, nobody likes to put them on single cloud. Now, how do you ensure that you have a seamless experience in case if you are not comfortable dealing with one particular vendor anymore, one particular cloud platform anymore, the cost of repatriating or moving it from one cloud to another is humongous. And is there a way one can do, seamless transfer? So we are providing that, in terms of you don't have to refactor and you don't have to go with long repatriation costs. All that. Second is, when you're looking at hosting your clients' data on a cloud, the other part is today's world. You are seeing a lot of risk associated with the cyber coming into play, and we have, come up with a solution which helps people protect themselves, whether it is at the endpoint or at the enterprise level as well. So, to the extent that most of the major two players in the market have tied up with us to provide cyber resiliency services to their customers, especially on cloud. So from our side, we are very clear as to we want to be a player in the market where we help our customers, whatever route they choose to address their business needs or to be reaching out to their customers. We provide them that access. Now, access in the form of infrastructure is what we are good at. While we provide the infrastructure, we also provide them with the services and the know-how, and provide them possibilities of the limits of our technology and where all we can stretch that to help them serve their customers better. That from our side, I would say is what we do.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Radhesh. Now I want to bring you in, Srivaths, to talk about the challenges of managing a multi-cloud environment and how are you solving it for Spice Money?
Yeah. So in a heavy transaction business, if you have a private cloud or a public cloud, and if you're dependent upon one particular data set, it's not going to solve for you because then it becomes a single point of failure. Most of the organizations which are invested with a 40 to 60% capacity of a DR, which is in passive mode, is an absolute sunk cost, which means here is where the solution architecture and re-architecting is required in the industry, which currently we are working on. And not many people have thought about it or not managed to work it successfully, is to have an active data center, which means technically, when you're into a heavy transactional business, how do you zone-wise route your transaction loads into two different data centers and have the third data center to have the data being replicated amongst the three of them? Now, that brings a justification of cost, especially when you're into an OPEX-led business model, where your revenue is basis OPEX, so expenditure has to be OPEX. So it solves for your financial needs, it solves for your cost strategy. At the same time, the solution architecting in terms of redundancy, in terms of availability, and in terms of end customer satisfaction is always there, because at any point in time, you can further build in passive DRs within this active DRs, active data center architecture that you're building, which means it talks about having load balancers, distribution of load, deciding to have the load balancers on public cloud, and then having a public-private kind of a combination, and you can do all those mix match and work. But what is crucial out here is the architecture. So the solution architecture from the infrastructure perspective with a combination of application, because this cannot be isolated. So once you define the infrastructure in the data center, your application needs to be tuned at the application layer and the database layer, and the combination of all three put together will give you a success for scale. It will help you to build redundancy, and you'll not be worried about the volumes that are going to come. You can shrink as well at the times when it's a rainy day. You can expand during certain spurts. Like for example, in insurance organizations, you have JFM as a spurt coming in, especially for our kind of organization, direct benefit transfers. When schemes are announced by the government organization, that is the time when the sudden spurts come in. So you have expandability, you have availability, you will have redundancy, and the platform uptime is what your customer is going to measure you at. So when you make these kind of strategy, all of the 4 levers put together, you will have a success in your deliveries. And that's exactly what we're working on.
Absolutely interesting perspective out there, Shiva. Thanks for that. I want to come back to you, Krishnan, to talk about how understanding data is really key to providing a sort of meaningful, personalized customer experience at scale. So, what are some of your strategies for leveraging data at scale?
If you look at the customer experience as such, this is the key for any kind of adoption that you have, right? But today we are talking about digitization processes, right? Some of the key things, ingredients are digital onboarding. I think Srivaths and Prasanna covered some of those things, right? Already in terms of how you can onboard customers through the digital channels, right? Digital medium, and obviously cloud as a solution is I would say the key ingredient here, right? Now, when you actually talk about ease of doing things, right? We have to make sure that the technology, the stacks that you have, how you can bring in the workflows and capabilities for an end user that they can go through as complex as a loan journey in a very simple and straightforward manner, right? It could be in terms of reading through the documents. You have fraud checks or validations that Prasanna spoke about, where you have to really real time, you have to evaluate, you have to extract the information, analyze, verify the information, and obviously all of this needs a lot of machine learning models around it, where you look into the data and try to understand the data and then triangulate that information. Now for a customer, right, what is happening behind the scene, they are not quite aware of things. All that matters for them is they want a smooth and seamless journey. Like, for example, you want to extract information from a document that is uploaded, and then you pre-populate the form that they are actually creating for a loan application, right? That's what matters for them. Like, how do I do things in a faster, more efficient way? But behind the scene, there are a lot of things that the application or the platform has to do, including reliability, scale, like there are uptimes, downtimes, and also making sure in the entire network flow, like it is all secured. Like whatever information is shared between the customer end and to the cloud, right, where it is getting stored in between all the right mechanism, whether it is the encryptions, whether it is all kinds of data security that has to be built in, so that, like one of the prime aspects here is, as pointed out earlier, availability is important, right? How you can make sure that you can scale at times when there are peak loads. These are very much given in a cloud application or cloud platform. But apart from that, how do you make sure the customer data is really secured, that all this information is utilized for the purpose it is needed, whether it is consent based or when they are giving that information directly to the providers. So I think ease of doing things is very important. But behind the scene, I think what the banks and fintechs have been doing is, through this cloud offerings, trying to do much more as the customer is doing things, much more in terms of real-time understanding of the customer, real-time understanding of their information, real-time understanding of what is the information given, so that the customer can be given offers instantly, or loans can be given, as somebody pointed out. We want to lend, we want to give some high level sanctions, right, in a very quick manner. So for the customer, these are all, that is important, like when they get the feedback input immediately, rather than wait for, days or weeks together.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Krishnan. Prasanna, I'm coming back to you. What is your advice on aligning the unique needs of unstructured data with a multi-cloud deployment model?
Got it. So when it comes to multi-cloud, right, or even multi-region setup where you possibly have multiple sources of truth for the data, in general, the challenges to deal with are complexity of the architecture, because where do you go for the source of truth for a particular piece of information? And the other key challenges in terms of what you want to solve for there is moving lots of data between different cloud providers or different regions is a huge challenge, because not only does it hurt your wallet in terms of the typical network cost is being quite high when it comes to egress and whatnot, right? So what you really want is, the preference, at least from our side, is to have an architecture which is simpler, has fewer moving parts, is manageable, and in the long run is cost effective as well, right? So one of the patterns we tried, and honestly, you could adopt this pattern even for structured data, which is what you try and do is you want to secure the data and make it durable whichever region or wherever the provider is where you're first ingesting or the data gets generated. And what you would want to do is do as much of the processing, pre-processing and analysis and anything and everything you want to do with the data locally as much as possible. And what you want to do is minimize the amount of data that has to transfer between various regions and various points of presence and whatnot. So the typical pattern is, wherever you ingest the data, do as much of the pre-processing, post-processing, and as much work as you can do, and get it to as much of a final ready to consume, whether it's a data scientist that wants to consume the data or other systems or other workflows that need to consume the data, right? Do as much of the processing within the same region, and in the end, transfer the final compressed, pre-processed final data between, because that way what you get is you get the speed of doing processing within the home region and doing it fast, as well as you save on the amount of data that needs to get transferred, the delay and everything, and even the cost angle, right? So that type of a strategy works, and that's something which we are trying to build for our use cases.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Prasanna. I want to come back to you, Anil, to talk about any specific factors that businesses should consider for a successful cloud strategy out there.
Being in sync with what's happening on the tech side, right? Let us say as a business, we are trying to acquire millions of users, right? Let us say in the timeline of 1 million or 2 million or 3 million, right? What works at 100K users may not work at 1 million. What works at 1 million may not work at 100K, right? So there always has to be a conscious decision taken mutually from the tech, from the engineering or the technology side, as well as from the business side, right? We have experienced this, right? So I think being on the same page always helps. That said, also a few aspects as and when you grow as a business, right? Let us say we mentioned here, right? One of the tactic we use to attract customer is some sort of incentives, rewards, and so on, right? So one always has to be aware that there can be a distributed kind of attacks here, right? So yeah, this is what I would suggest, right? Always make a conscious decision, always discuss more, right? Because a lot of things are realized only in the hindsight when you look at the data. But there is a gap between business growing and versus that data coming to tech. We running the data science algorithms, analyzing the data, slicing and dicing in various ways, and then that feedback has to go back to the business on the next steps, right? So this feedback loop has to be figured out first. The milestones has to be decided in advance, right? This is the point where we'll get back to the data and figure out the next steps, right? I think, yeah, that's what my suggestion would be.
Right. Thanks for that, Anil. I want to come to you, Radhesh, to talk about some of the key boxes to tick when you consider data and cybersecurity data in a multi-cloud environment, because that's really taking up a lot of attention these days.
Yeah, I think, when you break up the workloads into different forms, and especially the data in what form people are looking at, you have to look for the right appropriate solution which fits your requirement. One is that part, that you spend on it. And then you need to also, secondly, what Prasanna and Srivaths were mentioning, from a workload and application based, you need to have a clear line or of visibility towards how you are repatriating your between multiple clouds, how you are moving your workloads or moving your files, how safe and how you are able to do it, right? Now, while doing this, like you rightly asked, in terms of how secure is the data, how are you ensuring that the cyber, how is it the customers are getting keeping their data secure from these hackers and people who want to gain access to your data points, right? So these are some of the areas where we have very well thought out strategies, and in fact we have invested heavily into technologies of the future, to the extent that from a cyber perspective, we have instituted, a technology with a protocol in place. What happens in case? How do you prevent your self from a cyber attack? Secondly, what happens in case if there is an attack happening? What do you do during that process, during the time of attack? And third, if you are not able to save yourself from the attack, is there any way you can recover your business faster? So all these three elements have been combined, and to ensure that people are having a structured path to look at what to do in case of a cyber attack. That whether it is pre or during or post, all three scenarios have been thought out, and at the same time, each one of them come up with a solution which meets the requirement, more often than not meets or exceeds the requirement the enterprises set for themselves. With regards to the, from a multi-cloud perspective, what we are doing from our organization, we kind of broken it down to multiple elements in terms of how you want to work very closely with the customers. One size doesn't fit all. Each of the organizations, even in this space, when you look at, four of the CTOs, CIOs sitting here talking about, and I'm pretty sure their approach to their business, each one of them would have a different way of addressing. Their target customer may be similar in nature, but their approach, the differentiation that they bring about, and the kind of things that they finer nuances that they bring to their product, differentiates them from their between themselves, right? Similarly, we've also done some fine-tuning parts on our offerings and from a technology perspective, so that we are able to differentiate ourselves very clearly. The one thing which has been helping us immensely has been the Vmware common fabric, which we are able to help our customers being able to seamlessly move workloads across different cloud platforms if they are having multiple cloud. More often than not these days, I'm seeing the customer, the players in the market, whether it is in fintech or any of the technology, they are having multiple clouds that they are managing. The workloads are not aligned only on a single cloud. So we also have UDS from a unstructured data storage platform, which is both available through the cloud medium as well as on-prem. But we are aligning that with the cyber solutions as well, so that the customers get a one-stop shop from our side.
Absolutely. Very interesting perspective shared out there, Radhesh. I have one final question where I want to bring each of you in to talk a little bit about what are some of the key words of advice that you have for technologists who are formulating their cloud strategies for a multi-million scale. Let's begin with you, Srivaths.
The first strategy that any business house has to really define is its budget, and has to understand its business modalities. It depends upon whether you're a small scale, large scale, or a medium scale business, and your strategy accordingly gets defined. Now, what is the low hanging fruit? The low hanging fruit is to identify those applications which are not having sensitive data, but which has got an internal transaction data, which can be very well moved on to the public cloud, where the data resides within the Indian region and it's easily accessible. Data where there is sensitivity, there is regulatory controls which are coming in, and where there are compliance issues are the one which should be in a secured public cloud environment with your own guarded space. Now, this helps you to really manage the cost well, because you have an hybrid approach out here. In today's world, if you want to build your own data center and put your servers and try to control it, then you'll be wasting your time. You need to identify your core of your business strategy. What is your critical IP in terms of data IP, platform IP, and product IP that you need to create? And focus your energies on that. You've got large data centers available with enough experts who are building these security layers for you. So you need to consider security as an important parameter as one of the strategy in terms of scale. You need to understand the transaction load capabilities in terms of expansion and shrink. You need to be mindful about the cost because though the cloud is very lucrative, it has to be managed well. While selling, it becomes very easy to say that when you are not using the load, you can switch it off and save the cost. But it calls for a lot of process discipline from people. So it's a combination of your budget, cost, your scale, the type of business model you are in, what stage of business cycle you are in right now, and how do you want to maneuver across all these levers. And then you need to take decisions, and the decisions cannot be a static decisions. You need to revisit your decisions every quarter. You need to find effectiveness, every penny to be saved. How do you scale very capably? How do you not only scale but bring availability and also reach to the customers? And that's how you need to build your strategy. So the strategy is always evolving. It can't be one size fit for all.
Right. Prasanna, you would like to go next?
Sure. I think what I'll emphasize is that to quote a cliche, right? You have to learn to crawl before you can learn to walk and before you can start running, right? So from that angle, I think security, Srivaths also touched upon it, definitely spend a ton of time in thinking through whatever product and it is that you're building, right? In terms of data and who's going to access it and how will the developers access, how will the business folks access. That needs serious thought even before you start, because some of the decisions you make, it's very, very hard to undo them later. But beyond that, I would say build for small scale, right? In the sense, even if you are familiar with some of the modern tech that one has to use for scaling to million or multi-million or whatnot, it's okay if initially you start with even a monolithic stack or what might be rated as a dated stack, right? It's okay. So from that angle, leverage the cloud. Don't compromise on security, but start slow. Focus on building your product, getting the product market fit, and actually meeting some user need. And over time, then you can solve for scale and performance and reliability, right? So it's mostly that, right? So it's always good to know what's the latest and greatest in terms of tech, but till you get to the scale, there is always this temptation of doing premature optimization or picking tools and technology which you may not need even a year later, right? Even a year is quite a long time if you're starting from scratch and are pretty much at the zero, going from 0 to 1, and you're at the 0 point, right? So that would be my main suggestion. So security, be really, really serious about it. But rest, you can learn along the way. You can iterate and change and adapt. It's okay to keep it small initially, then increase complexity and whatnot with the scale as it grows.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Prasanna. Let's come to you, Anil.
I'd like to repeat what Prasanna said, right? I think at the early stages of the business, only thing that matters is security side of things, especially being in fintech, right? If you have payment gateway involved, if you have customer data involved, be it KYC data, right? Take utmost care of this, right? Purely from a technology or engineering perspective, there is always a tendency to chase after the fancier technologies, right? Because it gives that immediate gratification, right? But what happens is you will end up losing focus, because now you have built something that is built for scale that you are going to face only after 5 years, and you have not solved for the near term, right? So solve for the security, right? And when building things, build for next 1 year, next 2 years, right? Always have that 5-year roadmap in your mind, right? But don't try to build it on day one. It may not be required. Business changes very fast, right? You might spend months and months building for a far-fetched tech, only to realize, as a business, you have to change strategy. Yeah, you have to pivot. Whatever you built is no longer required. What you need is totally something else, right? So I think I agree with both the points that Prasanna mentioned. Give highest priority to security, and build for the near term without losing focus on the long term.
Yeah, I think Anil, Prasanna, and Srivaths have nailed it. I would say, the key thing is it depends on what is your goal, what you want to achieve, right? As an organization, if the cloud strategy starts from there, right? Obviously, the data security, I would say personally, being in fintech or otherwise, the security aspect has to be looked at as covered by all others. I think that is a paramount importance. You look at the right architectures, the right kind of there are enough things available, how to architect well from a security standpoint, because there is no second thought on that. Like once you get the customer information or you're serving your customers, this is one thing that has to be in place, right? So design your architecture that is through a security approach, right? The second thing that I want to mention here is when you look at like when we started in AWS cloud, right? And then we moved on to the other clouds also as a hybrid offering. Now, as a product, when you evolve, you want to build it to scale. We want to build it slowly, but you want to go to the market quickly. So you may leverage some of the services that the cloud platforms already gives you, right? Whether it is the ML frameworks or any of the different services that they offer. But when it comes to the services, we have to make sure that we don't go with a particular service that are part of only a particular cloud offering, right? So what would happen is you have to make sure that you segregate that piece when you want to go with a multi-cloud hybrid approach, right? So don't go with a specific cloud offering. It has to be a generic solution, right? That is something that would help you go to scale into multi-clouds, right? And already they covered about cost and optimization, etc. The third thing that I want to mention is build it small, build through a microservices architecture, because you don't know where it will evolve, right? As rightly pointed out by Prasanna, Anil, and others. So when we started our product, it was a aggregation model. It was a architecture which was supposed to be for marketplace. But when we evolved, I had to quickly turn around this into a SaaS product, into a SaaS solution for the same platform had to do a transformation. It had to reorient itself into a SaaS solution. So when you build in a microservices architecture, these are some of the things that you will be able to do. And especially if you are going with an enterprise scale, you have to integrate to those systems, and each system is different. So think small, but think in microservices frameworks, so that you can go bits and pieces, but you can easily scale and utilize or leverage the architecture. So paramount importance is security. You go with a microservices architecture. And then the third aspect being, make sure that you don't use some of the core cloud-specific components. Make sure that it is generic, so that if you want to scale, if you want to, as somebody pointed out, by the way, we don't, our hybrid approach is client-based, because our clients demand that they go with a particular solution or a particular platform, because that's what their information security have tick marked, right? For us, it is more of a client-specific solution in different cloud platforms. But for others, they will divide the workloads, into different cloud platforms. So all of this matters for the, for your optimization of cost, etc. So adopt the right strategies. Start small, but have the right thinking and right, approach from the beginning.
Right. Final word from you, Radhesh.
Yeah, so I think most of the people have mentioned the parts very clearly in terms of security being the utmost importance. Then second part being scale it as you from a access basis to where you want to be, the architecture to be. You design it in that manner. Now in terms of, you can't plan too much into future, obviously, because the business evolves, and you also need to look at solutions which are coming in on a day-to-day basis, on a regular basis. There are technology advancements which are coming into the marketplace, and one needs to be nimble in terms of being able to move quickly in terms of where we are. Now, this, there are 3-4 elements here. One is looking at your organizational requirement. Second is on the timeline, part. Third is on in terms of what kind of architecture that you're looking and defining. Is it for current and for the future? How much of future are you looking to plug it into this place? And then looking at how do you modernize your applications as well. In terms of, you also have to evolve that in terms of how it helps your customers, and thereby how much of utilization you're getting from the cloud side. And to the extent, even I think, I'm not sure whether it was Srivaths or Prasanna who mentioned about being cognizant about the cost factor. You need to be always looking at it in a at a very close watch. Cloud is very easy to enter. It is very enticing, and once you enter, it keeps you in for a long time, and then it does not allow you to move out because it catches hold of you. It is like you get a small yeah, exactly. What Prasanna mentioned is appropriate. It's a dream, and once you're in, sometimes it's very expensive. It is very expensive to live that dream. That's where most of the organizations today, when you scale, when startups like you are scaling big time, we have seen a whole lot of customers coming back to us from a repatriation perspective because it's seemingly impossible to manage the cost. From an operational perspective, it is becoming humongous. More often than not, we enter into these scenarios without having an exit strategy. If you have an exit strategy, it helps. It helps, keeping you honest in terms of up to what stage are you willing to stay invested in a cloud platform. Beyond that, is it sustainable? Is it manageable or not? Or is it better off that we are going on-prem? These are things which, every organization as they evolve, look at it, and as it serves them fit in terms of best, they look at and come about. And we are there to serve them in whichever way, whichever direction they want to adopt.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for this very insightful discussion, panelists. It's really been very, very informative, and all our viewers listening to this will have a lot of insights from this. So thanks so much for your time, and thanks for joining us. With that, it's a wrap on this roundtable for today.